What is up, guys? It's Mason once again. Back from my break. Wasn't really a break. Lots of times when you see that I don't stream for long or post videos for long, it may be that I have internet issues. I mean, I haven't posted videos for long, though I have been streaming quite consistently. But mostly when I'm not doing both, it's a sign that there are internet issues, and I have a lot because of where I stay. But to get back into the groove of things, I wanted to show you guys this game I played because it has aggressive elements, so that those who are interested in playing like aggressive chess, you will have sort of like a certain kind of mindset that helps playing aggressive chess, right? So let's get into this game. It's a very interesting game that I played. But if you haven't, remember to like and subscribe. It really does help me out. So we have d4, d5, and then e3, and then c5. So here I'm going for not my traditional London or Jobava lines. I'm going more for what is known as the Collie Zukertort, right? And every time I play this opening, I get these very interesting, aggressive lines. And sometimes it becomes very positional when I get c4 in, depending on if my opponent allows it or not. But the opening is not really where I want us to focus. So let's get to this point, right? Takes kind of scared me, a good point to note, because in this opening that I'm playing, the aggressive form that it takes, you want to play this kind of stonewall pawn structure, then you want to go f4, g4, right? That is the kind of idea you want to go for. So seeing the weakness of this pawn kind of worried me a bit, seeing as my opponent could use this diagonal, either with the bishop or with the queen. But with the queen, not so much because the pawn blocks it, right? So my opponent plays queen to c7. I played queen to e2. I didn't want to rush with this move. Just wanted to see what my opponent would do. I especially wanted to be sure that my opponent was going to castle kingside, because if he did castle queenside, playing uber aggressive on the king side, I felt would not help me. So we have h6. I castle, my opponent castles, and now I click in f4. So what is going on here? The plan, like I mentioned earlier, is to push g4. And the reason for g4 is to go g5 and possibly trade off these pawns, right? Now, why would you want to do that? Now, in aggressive chess, one of the things you want to do is you want to open lines towards your opponent's king. What that means is you want to remove the pawns that block the diagonals or the files that target your opponent's king, right? So you maybe even want to push this pawn away. You want to move this pawn away, and you just want to have clear semi-opened or open files on against your opponent, right? And the point here is, if I could trade off these pawns, this g file becomes open, and I have a very interesting resource of king h1, rook g1, opening lines against my opponent's king. So that's what you want to do. But my opponent here plays knight to d7, and when I see knight to d7, I'm not really bothered about knight takes. What is really annoying me is f6. f6 may not be that strong of a move, but here it kind of worried me because I felt it slows down my attack or stops it completely, right? So whenever you're playing chess, as always, you want to consider what your opponent's plans are and try to create counter plans to that. And in that view, I played queen to g4. Point being, if my opponent does attack my knight, I do have these kinds of moves, whereby if the king moves, then this guy is just in trouble, right? So my opponent notices that and then comes back. I also go back with my queen, and I'm like, okay, maybe I would go for a draw if he tries repeating, because sometimes I'm not so confident with my attacks. But fortunately for me, my opponent here played rook f to e8. He switched it up, right? He decided not to go back and draw the game. He wanted to create other threats, right? And also defend the biggest issue that he had. Remember, if the knight was here, I would be able to take here. So this rook move stops that. But now I'm actually happy because I can go on with my plan, What was my plan? G4. The plan is to get to G5. My opponent taking here does not stress me out in any way because lines are opening up. Don't forget that key statement, right? So my opponent again goes back here. This idea still exists. So I play G5 because if you come in here, I want to open lines, right? I think I just either take here first or something like that. There were some other lines here. I'm just sticking to the main lines of the game. But after I played this move, my opponent completely gives up on this idea and goes takes. And yes, I said we want to open lines, but you have to be very sensitive to the position here. At this point in time, it's more of a superficial attack. It hasn't come to light yet. I don't have any strong threats, so my opponent can simply parry what I'm doing. So tempo is very important, especially when you want to play aggressive chess. You need to have tempo on your side. So how do I have tempo here? I need to make a move that puts my opponent under pressure. Playing this move, first of all, doesn't help me because I lose a defender off this knight, and my opponent can, if he wants to capture on this square, actually he would capture on this square, because he has 4 attackers and I just have 2 defenders, actually 3. So there's no way I'm going to like successfully defend the knight. So putting 2 and 2 together, what is the next move we play here? Queen to h5. And queen to h5 has some significant threats that my opponent has to deal with. So yes, you can take here, but I do have a first move that I can play. I can start off with a check, or I can completely ignore what you did and play takes here, because now these guys are connected and you can see that things are building up. Like, these are ideas that could come up. So my opponent is like, okay, no, I don't want any of that. I bring my knight back to try and cover everything, but then I simply go queen takes g5, and there is still a possibility for attack, right? Imagine I get my rook to this square. My opponent is going to have to weaken his squares, and that is to my advantage, right? I still have h4, h5 in case this pawn push happens, and you can see the weakening of my opponent's structure or my opponent's position. Eventually, this bishop could even come this way and then join the attack if it's so wished. But you see how the attack is brewing. Right now, the position is very quiet. Not much is going on. Let me just show you the engine. Engine doesn't give it a very high evaluation here, right? So the position is quite equal, but there's potential. Remember, you are playing human beings, not an engine, right? The engine can see everything, but not the human being, right? His pressure, his blood pressure is heating up now, so he's really concerned about what is going on. And in view of that, my opponent makes a mistake. He goes bishop to e7, right? And he views that, okay, now he has set up a discovered attack on my queen. Should I do any other thing, the knight is going to move and continue and attack my queen. And here you are very likely to panic and maybe move to a safe position. But that would stop the attack, right? And sometimes in the attack, you want to keep pushing forward. Now, whenever you calculate and you don't see a way forward, then disengage. But here I see that there's a way forward. And the reason I see that is because of a long calculation I had, which will come to fruition. But also I realized that, yeah, even if my opponent does get the discovered attack, it doesn't really put me in any difficult situation, right? It's not a discovered attack that I have to prevent from happening. So what do I do in this regard? The second thing you want to do as an aggressive player is add more pieces to the attack. Currently, even though the bishop does exist, these are the key players in this attack. So I need more people in this attack to make this attack much more scary. And now realizing that this discovered attack threat does not do anything to me, I play the move rook to f3. Of course, you have to be careful where you move the rook to, because then this discovered attack can become scary, right? So something like this just doesn't make any sense, because now this discovered attack is a problem, right? But we go rook here, and I had to ensure that my opponent did not have a way of attacking my rook. My opponent goes knight to e4, and like I said, yes, he's attacking me, but it's not something that was so scary that I had to prevent from happening. Why? Because I am now able to put my queen on a very good square that continues the attack. And this is what I wanted. Queen to h5. And now we resume our threat. We give our opponent something to think about. You can bring the bishop back for sure, but then we have this one, right? So you can see that everything seems to be flowing in our favor now. Like everything seems to be working. And that's why this rook f3 is a very powerful move. It facilitates a continuous attack on the h file. So you don't have to focus on one side of the board. So to stop this, my opponent goes g6. But if you saw the rook move, then this move is not so difficult to see, even though it is quite tricky. But the move is knight takes g6. And after the trade, your opponent is just dead lost, right? So this is why it's important to weaken your opponent's structure into open lines, right? Because now that the files and the diagonals are opened, the attack just flows to the point that you can even give up one of your minor pieces to make more holes in your opponent's position, to open up more lines in your opponent's position. And since your pieces are already set for the attack, that sacrifice just boosts the strength of your attack. So g6, knight takes g6, f takes g6, and now queen takes g6. If my opponent runs this way, it's GG. This move is like the MVP of the whole game. But my opponent moves into this square. And we continue the attack. We cover all these squares. The only thing we don't cover is here. How do we get to this square? Rook to h3, because we want to come in this way. The rook moving away doesn't help. If the rook moves away, no matter where, this is still like lights out. So my opponent has to be very quick. He has to defend against this square. What does he do? Bishop to f6. And here is where the beauty strikes, right? Here is where the beauty strikes. Just to reiterate something here. After this move, my opponent could have played this. But like we've established, those types of moves do not help in these types of situations, right? So there was no plausible reason for my opponent to take this knight. And I knew that, and I had actually envisioned this whole position, which I don't often do, but I was able to see it from here. And you're going to see what I saw. Because after bishop comes in here, if you don't see this move, the attack just collapses. Is white still winning? Possibly, but white would struggle a bit, right? But the move here is knight takes e4. And why is knight takes e4 such a powerful move? If you take, I can take. Again, blocking does not help my opponent in any way, shape, or form. If you come in with the queen, we still have this. And we are just winning the position, right? And what else could my opponent do? If my opponent decides to still block with the queen, we can just jump in with our knight. And after queen takes, bishop takes, this is still a very strong position for white, right? So after knight takes e4, my opponent simply goes bishop to g7, because he realizes that, okay, if he does capture, or if he does capture the knight here, he's losing instantly. But this doesn't stop anything. We simply go knight to g5. We are threatening other stuff. What was the main threat here? I think it has something to do with this, or even rook coming in here. Like, you are just adding pieces to the attack. Your opponent does not really have the liberty to play any other move. He has to play moves in response to your future threats, right? And here my opponent plays takes. I wish I could find the VOD of the stream, because this game was played on a live stream. And when my opponent played this, I was just so happy that he made that mistake, because as you can see, the move that comes up here is rook to f1, and that ends the game. So Very, very beautiful game. The two takeaways from this is one, you want to, as an attacking player or as an aggressive player, you want to open lines. And two, you want to increase the number of attackers you have on your opponent, right? When you are the aggressor, you don't want to be trading down, right? You want to keep things. But when you are the defender, you want to be trading down. You need more troops to create more threats. The more troops you take off the board, the less threatening your position becomes. So these are the two principles that do help in aggressive chess. Now, again, mind you, you can see that my moves mostly were forward based, especially after my opponent played the rook move, right? I did give in to this coming back again, right? You should realize when your attack does not seem to be bearing any fruit, right? You shouldn't force the attack to work. Once you realize that the attack is losing its steam, just come back. Don't try and keep forcing the attack. Actually, it's going to fight back against you, right? So that is the interesting game I wanted to show you guys. I will be doing some of these live game reviews whenever like interesting positions come up in my games, whether on stream or off stream. Any interesting position that comes up, I will be doing these quick short analysis videos, and I hope it helped you guys out. If you have questions, I do love questions a lot. So if you do have questions, feel free to always ask me in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, always remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help me out. I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great peace.